Good morning, friend, and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan and you are on my homestead here in Wyoming, and we are getting going on a lot of freezer meals. Today is gloomy, it's between snowing and raining outside, so I just want to spend the day relaxing and enjoying the kitchen. I have the house to myself today, so things are nice and quiet, and I just want to enjoy my time in the kitchen. So I'm going to be making a bunch of freezer meals. Today we're going to be making caramelized onion meatballs, tamale pie, cabbage rolls, burritos, pizza crusts, and lasagna. So I am just going to kind of hang out in the kitchen all day. We'll see how long this ends up taking. We are going to be cooking a bunch of different meats. Today I'll be using elk, moose, pork, antelope, and chicken. So that should be exciting to get all of those meats incorporated. And I'm just excited to kind of relax, hang out, and just spend this time together in the kitchen. So come along with me. First thing we need to do is just get these pans behind me heating up. I need to get some of our sausage cooking up, and that is from the pigs that we raised together over the summer. And then I also need to get some elk and moose cooking up in this other pan. So let's go ahead and get those cooking, and then we will process some onions. All right, so this pan I am going to just leave without any oil because that is the pan I'm going to use for my pork. And then this big pan over here, oops, I didn't mean to do that yet. That's right. I'm gonna let this heat up and then I will add in my oil. Once this is a little bit heated, we're gonna do the moose and elk in here, and then I'm gonna do the pork in there. And while those pans heat up, I'm gonna go ahead and get my vegetables cut up. So I need to cut up 4 onions for our, this onion looks a little sad. That's all right. I need to cut up 4 onions for our caramelized onion meatballs. I made these during the pantry challenge. I had never made them before, and they are one of our absolute favorites now, a total staple. They're really, really great because I put them in literally everything. I put it in, let's see, chicken noodle soup. Golly, this onion is sad looking. Okay, all of those layers are bad. Okay, it's all right. Okay. I put them in chicken noodle soup. I made meatball subs out of them. I did, what else did we do? I honestly think I just ate them. Oh, we made those pizza boats out of them. They are just so versatile because they're not really Italian flavored. They're just nice and caramelized onion tasting. They are so good. So I want to get a bunch of those in the refrigerator or in the freezer. So I'm gonna make a double batch of those. I'm hoping to make about 40 meatballs. That way we can get those all frozen up and I can just pull them out whenever we're in a pinch. This is what I did last time, was when we needed dinner, I could just lay out those meatballs and either put them in a sauce and just defrost them in a sauce in about 5 minutes, or just lay them out for hardly any time at all and they would defrost and we would have dinner right then and there. So I'm going to do that again. Honestly, didn't do much prep work before today. Let's get those peels off. I think I'm gonna make the meatballs in this bowl later, but because there's gonna be these onions in the meatballs, I'm just gonna use this bowl for now. So in terms of prep work, all I did was cooked some rice and defrosted my meat. I think that was it. I can see my pan is hot behind me, so let's go ahead and get our meat on. So like I said, in this pan, we're gonna do, this is elk and our moose. And then in this pan, we're just gonna do 2 pounds of pork. This is about 3.5 pounds of ground elk and moose, and this is gonna be 2 pounds of pork. And then I'm just gonna break this up a little bit. They're still a little bit frozen, which is totally fine. That will cook. I'm just gonna break this up so we can get it cooked nice and evenly, and then we'll jump back over to our onions. So this is being cooked for our taco or our tamale pie, and then this is going for our lasagna. I will mix some of the elk and moose in with the pork when that time comes, but I did them separately because I need some just plain ground beef for the tamale pie. All right, we are back over at our onions. And I like to cut my onions going this direction when I'm caramelizing. I find that they stay intact a lot better. So normally when I'm cutting up an onion, oops, I cut it this way and then that way. But when I'm cutting an onion, I like to keep the poles here and slice pole to pole. But you do whatever works for you. And one question that I've been getting in the comments a lot is how my eyes don't cry or water when I am cutting onions. And I always jokingly tell my mom it's my superpower in life. Onions don't make me cry. I honestly think it's because I wear contacts that I have kind of like a shield on my eyeballs from the spray of the onion juice, but I honestly don't know. Onions I am making quite a mess. Good thing these counters were cleaned this morning. Onions just don't really bother me. All right, so we need to slice one more onion that way, and then our last onion we're gonna just dice up normally. All right, so here is both of our onions. I dice these up pretty small because these will be going into our cabbage rolls and I don't want like a huge clump of onion. And then here is our sliced onions. Now I don't have that many frying pans, so I need to wait for the meat to be done and then we will fry these up using the pork pan. These we'll just leave as is, and now I need to cut up a little bit of chicken. I did just leave, one trick I do is I just left my vegetable cutting board out. Yes, it had onions on it, but I can always flip it over. That way I don't go through like 100 cutting boards in one day. All right, and here is our chicken. I just want to dice this up just to give us little pieces. This is going to go in our chicken burritos. So I just wanna use some nice, not teeny tiny, but just cut this into some nice bite-sized pieces. And then I just cut off any piece that I don't love the way it looks. And then we will cook this as well. So we're just kind of doing things in batches. If you don't have a huge stove or you don't have a ton of pans, I find this works absolutely perfect. I'm just gonna throw our chicken in this. So that's all I'm doing here is just dicing it up nicely. And I rarely cook with chicken. So this will be kind of a fun change to have some chicken burritos. We're gonna put some green chili in with these. They're gonna be super, super yummy. All right, friends, so our meat is done. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scoop out about half of this, and we're gonna save this for our tamale pie. And then over here, we have our pork, and it is nice and caramelized. I love getting those brown bits on the pork. And I am one of those people, I don't love greasy food. I like to drain some of that grease. So I just prop my pan up. I'm fine with some grease. I just don't like it when it's like a pool, you know? And then I'm just gonna let this sit like this for just a minute. All of our grease will come down. All right, and then I always just keep a cup in my freezer. This is a new one. So I'm just going to spoon out the grease that I can, and then any grease that is too hard, we won't worry about it. But I just find that this helps keep like that greasy top off of my food. And then this fat, I like to mix in seeds or oats, and I will feed it to our birds. If you've ever bought one of those like lard blocks from the store, this is basically just fat mixed with seeds. So that's exactly what I do. I just keep a little store of this. I'll keep this in my freezer, and then when it gets full, I'll give it to the birds with some seed in it. Okay, so I don't need any of this pork by itself, so I'm going to now mix that in, and that is like the perfect golden color that I wanted. And then we're just going to give this a good mix. And that is going to be my pasta meat mixture. Now I have a bunch of these marinara sauces that we jarred up together, so I'm gonna throw those in. And the heat is off of this. Now I'm going to throw, I was gonna do my onions in here, but I think I have too many. I'm gonna put the chicken in here, and we'll just use some of that, the remaining pork fat to cook that chicken. I'm fine with that much. And I'm just gonna use that same spoon. And I'm just going to add in a little bit of salt, some pepper, a good amount of pepper, and a good amount of paprika. And then we're just gonna let this cook down. Give that a quick stir, get that mixed in. I'm gonna turn the heat back up on this meat mixture. And then I'm just gonna throw in a minced garlic. We're gonna let that cook down for just a minute. And I'm just going to dump in, okay, I just dumped in my marinara sauce. I rinse out my jars with just a little bit of water. We don't wanna waste any of that. We worked hard for it. And then I'm just going to combine these all. We're gonna scrape the bottom a little bit, get some of those brown bits off. And there is our meat sauce. I did add salt and pepper to the elk and moose when it was cooking, so I'll just need to taste this for a little flavor, make sure it's good. I'm just gonna let this cook for just a minute to kind of get those flavors all meld together. So I'm just gonna throw a lid on this and let this simmer for just a little bit. Okay, the best part about lasagna is how quickly it comes together. So all I'm gonna do is just whisk one egg. And I am using 15 ounces of ricotta. I meant to get a big container, but I accidentally got this container. So we're gonna make it work, it's perfect. And I save these containers, they're really nice if you're doing like a painting project at your house or anything like that. They work really, really nicely because then you can just throw it away when you're done. I also like to use it when I'm giving people leftovers and I know that I probably won't get my Tupperware back or they live far away or something like that. So I always hold on to those containers. So there's our ricotta. I'm just going to do a pinch of salt and then a little bit, maybe like a tablespoon or two of parsley. And this is parsley that we freeze-dried from our garden together. And I like that to be pretty small. Perfect, we're gonna mix that all together. And I think I'm gonna throw in a little pepper too. All right. There's our pepper, mix that in. All right, well, let's get to assembling our lasagnas so we have one win under our belts. That was a close one. I almost forgot. I need to try this meat sauce before we make a bunch of lasagnas. So I just have a spoon of it here. It's literally boiling, or simmering, so give it just a minute. It's gonna be very hot. Here we go. Give this a test. We're just tasting it for seasoning, salt, pepper, that kind of thing. That's so good. I'm gonna add just a little bit more salt, and then I think we're there. That is so good. I think I can get 3 lasagnas out of this. So I'm gonna do 1 in a glass dish. And I honestly will probably just keep this out for dinners this week. And I'm just gonna lay a little bit of meat sauce, oops, sorry. I'm just gonna lay a little bit of meat sauce down at the bottom. I'm gonna start with 2. My only hesitation is the ricotta. Otherwise, we for sure have enough, but I guess we don't have to go crazy with the ricotta. Okay, we'll just do 3. If one doesn't have ricotta, so be it. Then I like to just use these oven-ready noodles. And if I remember correctly, yeah, they're almost the right length, but not quite, so. I'm just gonna break them so that they'll lay down. Then I'm gonna grab my ricotta And I'm just going to lay a little bit on each noodle. Don't worry, we'll spread this out. And again, I'm going it kind of light on the ricotta because I want it to work for all three, but you can add in as much ricotta as you want. And if you don't like ricotta, you can skip this, or you want it dairy-free or whatever you want. That's the best part about cooking at home, is you can make it exactly how you and your family like it. That looks good. Then we're going to actually, oopsie. I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of Parmesan on top of that layer. And this was blocked Parmesan. I just shredded it this morning just using my food processor. Perfect. Okay. Now we're gonna throw some meat sauce on top. And Sam is very heavy on the meat, light on the sauce when it comes to meat sauce. But again, you are the chef. You make yours however you want. And I do have more marinara if I need to add it to stretch. All right, just like that. And then we are going to repeat these layers. I do save my lasagna pieces, and once you get a good collection of them, you can make a lasagna soup. And it's literally a deconstructed lasagna, and you just use the pasta as the noodles. So it's a great way to not waste a ton of lasagna noodles. Okay, friends, that was literally perfect. I pretty much scraped that pan absolutely clean. So I'm just going to top this now with some mozzarella. It's been a little bit, so our sauce has cooled down. If your sauce is still pretty hot, I would wait to top it with mozzarella. One thing I forgot to mention is these pans are small because there's only 2 of us. So I don't need to make a huge 9x13 pan because it just wouldn't be realistic for us to get through that. We would probably eat this, for example, for probably 2 dinners, or I would do a dinner and then I would get 2 lunches out of it. So I like to do things a little bit smaller, just because if we did an entire 9x13, it would take us over a week to get through it. We don't eat a ton. I mean, we eat very, very well, but it would just not be realistic for us to get through. So I like to use these smaller foil pans and this square pan instead. And this is like, oh my gosh, this is so heavy. So I ended up getting 3 layers on each of these. I'm just going to let them sit out and continue cooling down, and then they will go into the freezer. This has a snap-on lid, and then these come with lids, but I'll also saran and foil them. I'm gonna set these off to the side to continue cooling, and we will move on to our next recipes. And best part is I got this pan totally cleaned out, so we can continue using this pan. I needed it empty to caramelize the onions. So let's get this washed. All right, we are cleaned up, and I am back over at the stove, and I am going to get my pan, this pan heating up so we can caramelize our onions. And then this is that chicken that we cooked together, and I'm using this for those chicken burritos. So I just turned the heat off. We're gonna turn the heat back on, and I'm gonna get the filling put together for our chicken burritos. And these burritos are so simple. So I'm just gonna do a jar of drained black beans. Then along with that, here is some of that corn that we preserved together this past summer from my neighbors. We're gonna throw some corn in. Then earlier I made up a little bit of rice. So I'm gonna put about, I don't know, 3/4 of a cup of rice in. And then we're just gonna give this a quick stir. Make sure our ratios are looking good, and I need this corn to defrost a little bit. That looks pretty dang good. And then the secret sauce is this 505 medium is the temperature we like. I don't know if you can get this across everywhere, but we really love this stuff. And this is just the Hatch Valley green chili. They do make like an actual green chili, but this is just the literal green chilies, nothing else. We might need that whole container. That's gonna be kind of the liquid that brings it all together. And it is spicy, I will warn you. If we had any of our garden Anaheims left, I would use that, but we don't, so. 505 works great in its replacement. And you could do salsa, enchilada sauce, whatever you want. If you've got kids, you probably don't want it to be super spicy, so I would do a mild salsa or a green enchilada sauce. And that's our burrito filling. I'm going to grab a spoon and give this a quick taste test. It's pretty cold still. It hasn't fully come up to heat. All right, we're gonna give this a bite. I've got a piece of, I missed a piece of corn. Okay, I have some black bean, corn, green chili, and chicken all in this bite. I don't know why I'm blowing on it, it's not hot. It's pretty warm. That is phenomenal. That sweet corn gives it a nice kick, like a nice little bite of sweet with the heat. I think I'm gonna add in just a tiny bit of corn, or a tiny bit more corn, and that is literally perfect. That is so good. All right, let's get the corn added in and then we'll assemble our burritos. All right, in the meantime, this pan is ready to go with our caramelized onions. So you wanna add in a good amount of olive oil. And then once that comes up to temperature, gonna throw in our onions. And I'm gonna put a generous amount of salt on this because that helps draw out the moisture from the onions. And we're just gonna let these cook low and slow for probably 40 minutes. Okay, so we are going to get these burritos assembled, and this can be a little bit of a tedious task, but totally worth it. These are great, just grab and go, take them on the road. Sam and I like to make burritos, and then we will warm them up before we go. This is just a little bit of cilantro. And then we will put them in just an insulated lunchbox, and we will eat them on road trips. So we really like to do that to, you know, I feel like sometimes we can fall into the trap of getting fast food all the time. So we find that that can make road trips a lot easier. So I'm just going to wrap these up. My filling has cooled down significantly, but I'm just going to line my tray here with our burritos, and I'm just going to let them continue to cool down. Then once they are cool, I just wrap each one in a piece of foil and then put them into the freezer. That way I am able to bake them up if I want, or I can just take them out of the foil. If you don't like using foil, I know some people don't love foil, you can do freezer paper or whatever you prefer. This just works well for us, so do whatever you want. All right, I'm gonna just roll burritos, and I'm just gonna listen to an audiobook or something like that until these are done. I'm gonna keep an eye on my onions that are caramelizing behind me and just give them a stir every like 5 or so minutes. All right, we have a very full stove top, so I'm gonna turn off my caramelized onions. Here I am heating up some water. We're just bringing that to a boil, and that's going to be for our cabbage rolls. And then over here, I am going to get going on the tamale pie filling. Now, I need these caramelized onions to completely cool because we're gonna be mixing them in with raw meat, and if they're hot, that's not ideal. So I'm gonna just stick them in this bowl. I'm gonna put these honestly outside because it's like 30 degrees outside, so that's gonna help cool them down. So I'm just gonna let these completely cool, and then in the meantime, we'll get this water boiling and our tamale pie filling going. My pan is hot. I'm just throwing in some onions along with some peppers. All right, so this is coming along. Our onions and peppers are cooked, so I'm gonna add back in our elk and moose meat. Give that a good mix. And then to this, I'm just gonna eyeball it. I need 1 teaspoon of cumin. I think cumin's pretty overpowering, so I'm gonna do less than that. I need a tablespoon of chili powder, which I think that's about all the chili powder I have. Give that a quick stir. I need a teaspoon of salt, a little black pepper, and however much red pepper flakes you want. Then we're gonna add in a can of black beans and about a cup of corn. Then I'm gonna add in 1 can of petite diced tomatoes. If you have homegrown, that is all the better. And then I'm gonna do probably about 10 ounces of tomato sauce. And we're just gonna let this cook down for a little while, just until everything kind of incorporates. All right, and while that is boiling down, my cabbage water is boiling. So we're just going to stick the entire cabbage head in the boiling water for about 3 to 5 minutes. And this is just gonna make it a lot easier for us to get pieces of cabbage off whole. All right, I went ahead and just grabbed a clean towel. Here is my cabbage. You can see these leaves are starting to peel off, so I'm gonna call that good. All right, and all I'm going to do is just try and get whole cabbage leaves off. Just wanna be as gentle as possible. And if it rips a little bit, it's okay. Hot. You're just gonna rip it off and lay it out like that. See how I ripped this corner? No big deal. And then on to the next layer. Cabbage is hard because it kind of grows into its own little nooks and crannies, so it can be hard to get out, but boiling definitely helps make that process a heck of a lot easier. So just take your time on this. It can feel tedious, but I'm gonna try to boil my leaves as little as possible. Like, I obviously want to be able to get them off, but I find that if I go too long, especially because we're gonna make a freezer meal, it can get kind of hard to work with. All right, so for this, we're gonna throw in some garlic. And to that garlic, I'm gonna also throw in just a little bit of our caramelized onions. Should be good. We're just gonna let this garlic melt a little bit. And this is going to be the sauce for our cabbage rolls. Then over here, I'm gonna mix in a little, probably about a cup or so of cheddar cheese. And I know that feels probably wrong because we normally top these types of things with cheese, but we're actually going to top this with kind of a cornbread type topping. It's so, so good. Very creamy, so yummy. So I'm putting the cheese in here so that we still get that cheesy flavor, but we don't actually top this with any cheese. And we get that nice cheese pull. So that's why we're putting it in here. And then I'm just going to let this cool down for a little while. See how there's really no, it's not liquidy anymore, or not runny. It's the perfect consistency. So I turned off the heat and we're just gonna let this cool down a little bit. Okay, my garlic is all incorporated. And if you don't have the caramelized onions, you will just cook onions regularly. Then I'm gonna add in 2 cans of petite tomatoes and 1 can of tomato sauce. And we're just going to stir that around really quick, get that onions and garlic off the bottom. And we're gonna let this cook for just a minute. All right, and before this starts to boil, I'm gonna add in some salt and pepper. I'm gonna eyeball 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. We're gonna let this come to a simmer. All right, let's get working on our filling. So that way, once our sauce has come together, we can assemble. So we're just going to do 1 egg. And to that, I am adding in 1 pound of moose meat. I'm gonna go wash my, well, yeah, I need to wash my hands real quick. Then to that, I'm gonna add in about a cup of cooked rice. We'll call that good. Then I need garlic powder. And this is garlic powder that we freeze dried together. Salt. Pepper. And then ideally fresh parsley, but I don't have any. So I got some stems in here from when I freeze dried it. We're just going to do freeze dried parsley, and you want a 1/4 cup of parsley. While my hands are covered in parsley, I'm just going to mix this together. And the rice is kind of acting as our binding agent. So where you would traditionally use breadcrumbs as a binder, we are using rice, which is awesome because this is a really great gluten-free recipe if you're looking for a new, exciting gluten-free recipe. And you don't want to overmix, you just want to mix enough. So I'm going to call that good. Now I should have done this before, but I didn't. I'm going to wash my hands and then get ready for our assembly. All right, so here is what we are going to do. First, you're going to just take a knife and make a V and pull out that really tough rib from your cabbage. Then I like to go the way that it automatically rolls. Well, before I get my hands dirty, we're gonna spray this and lay down a good amount of sauce. This sauce is so, so good. If you don't, it's a little bit sweet. I did add in just a little bit more red wine vinegar. So just keep that in mind if you do make this. If you don't love sweeter sauces, maybe reduce the brown sugar, but I just added a little bit more vinegar to help cut it, and that was perfect. So, okay, the recipe says to lay down half of the sauce. I don't know, you're supposed to use a 9x13. I know I have a little bit less cabbage leaves than that, or than I should have. My cabbage was pretty small. So I don't know that I'll be making enough. And then you really just want to shape, this is 1/3 cup. You take 1/3 cup and then make it into a log, and then just fold or roll the cabbage around it. We're just kind of wrapping it up. And then you'll just lay it seam side down. So again, we're gonna cut the stem out, take 1/3 cup of our mixture or so. And if you've ever heard of a porcupine meatball, this is basically a porcupine meatball. It's a meatball with rice in it. And you use, a lot of times you put it in cabbage or make a tomato sauce with it. So this is very, very similar. Lay it on the seam. And these are pretty dense, I think, because we're doing 1/3 cup of the meat mixture. These are gonna be very hearty. So I'm glad that I'm doing a smaller pan because I think a 9x13 would be way too much. Okay, I'm gonna call that good for this batch, and then we're just going to top it with some sauce. So I probably only used about half of the sauce for this pan, and then we'll use a half of the sauce for the other pan. And I'll just remember when we make this that it's just a dinner portion, not a dinner and a lunch. Okay, I'm gonna repeat this process and use up the rest of this. Okay, friends, we are going to assemble our tamale pie now. And if you've been here for a while, you will know that this recipe is the most unlike my cooking ever, but I had it like 5 or 6 years ago and it's phenomenal. First thing we're gonna do is whisk together 2 eggs. And I generally try to keep things on the healthier side. However, life is all about balance, so this recipe is definitely one for the exception. And if you wanna keep it lighter, just go ahead and do that bottom portion that we did with the ground meat, the tomatoes, the peppers, onions, corn, black beans. And you don't need to do the topping, but if it was up to me, I would say do the topping. Okay, then you need a box of Jif mix. Just trying to get some of these big clumps out of that mix. And you can do your own homemade Jif mix if you want. Jif is just like, I think it was 30 cents for that box, so it's just so dang affordable. Okay, then I'm gonna add in 8 ounces, which is a half a container of sour cream. I know, I said it's not healthy, but it's so good. And I guess along with that, we're gonna do 1 can of whole kernel sweet corn. Probably should have used a bigger bowl. And 1 can of cream style corn, or if you have frozen corn, the equivalent of 15 or so ounces. Then to that, we're gonna need a pinch of salt, a tiny bit of sugar, maybe a half a teaspoon. We'll mix that. I'm gonna switch to the sour cream spoon. There we go, that's a lot easier than a fork. And finally, your butter. This is 1 whole stick of butter. Like I said, I don't normally cook this way, as you could, tell. That's why I put it on the cutting board. I knew I was gonna make a mess. I try to keep things healthy and light, but sometimes you just need a little comfort food. Now, for our assembly, just spray the bottom of those, and I'm gonna divide this in half. Get every last bit of this. This is a lot of garden produce, self-harvested meat. We don't want to waste that. Then we're gonna just smooth this out, get an even layer. And this is why we wanted this to cool down, because there's raw eggs in that, in the topping. We don't want to scramble any eggs or anything. Perfect, that looks great. Then I don't think I need all of this. Then I'm just gonna top this on top. I'm gonna spread it out and see how much we need. If we don't need it all, then we can always just, you can bake this up. This makes a delicious corn casserole. It's kind of like ooey gooey cornbread, but we'll see. You want that to be as even of a layer as possible. I'm gonna call that good. I'm just gonna put this in a glass Tupperware container, and then I can literally just pop this in the oven this week, make a nice little or corn casserole. We'll be good to go. Okay, 2 more down. Next we need to get our meatballs made and our bread dough made, or our pizza dough. All right, friend, so because this is just what I'm doing today, I'm just kind of putzing along. I decided to take a little break. Got the kitchen all turned around. Obviously, I still have 2 recipes to make, but my kitchen isn't huge, so when I get a lot of dishes or things start to get busy, it gets a little stressful. And I like to avoid that stress at all costs. So what I'm doing is we are making our caramelized onion meatballs. So in this, ooh, sorry, that was a terrible noise. So in this bowl, I currently have 2 pounds of ground moose meat. And then here is probably 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. And I need about a teaspoon or so of salt. And the equivalent of pepper. And this is a lot of meat, remember that. And I am doubling this recipe. Perfect. Then I need about 2 teaspoons of dried thyme, so we'll say that's 1 teaspoon, and this is thyme from our garden that we freeze-dried together, and freeze-dried thyme is probably my favorite herb. It is so, I mean, I love thyme, but it's just so true to flavor, so good. And then I need a ton of parsley, so we're just gonna, and my hands are very clean. I'll do 1 more of that size. then I need just a couple tablespoons of olive oil. If you're using beef, you don't really need this. This meat just doesn't really have any fat, so this is kind of a binding agent. And you can make these with turkey, chicken, beef. I'm obviously using moose, whatever you want. And then here I have some breadcrumbs, and these are just as I get a piece of bread or buns or something like that that I'm not gonna eat. I just need to crush these a little more. Turn them into breadcrumbs. Some of them are a little big, that's okay. This is probably about 3/4 a cup. We'll start with that, I can always add in the rest. I'm just going to get in here with my hands now. Like I said, they're very, very clean, and this is honestly the best way to make meatballs or meatloaf is you just gotta use your hand. And all of these items are room temperature, so my caramelized onions have come down from the stove. They're not hot anymore. My garlic's not warm. Everything is just room temperature. And our oven is preheated to 350 degrees. If you want, you can cook these raw, or sorry, you can freeze these raw. This already smells really good. I'm gonna put all the breadcrumbs in. But I love having a dinner ready in 3 minutes. All I have to do is defrost meatballs and I can get dinner on the table. So I am going to opt to cook all of mine, but this is totally up to you. Remember, you don't want to overmix your meatballs. I think I'm going to call that good. And I do want to add in just a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, so I'm going to clean my hands and add that in. And this, I'm just going to measure with my heart. Let's give this one more mix, and we'll start shaping. To shape my meatballs, I'm just using a cookie scoop. And you can make your meatballs whatever size you want. I just find that this helps make everything the same size. And you also can pan fry these if you want a nice brown crust. I usually do, but since we're making so many, I am not going to today. But if you're gonna do that, all you have to do is just put some oil in a pan and then just quickly brown each side of your meatball, and then you'll put that into a 350 degree oven to cook the rest of the way. So I'm just going to scoop them and then shape them. I'm gonna put them pretty close together because they don't really expand or anything. We got 33 meatballs. Into the oven they go. All right, let's get our pizza dough made. This is the last thing we need to make today, which is exciting. So all I need to do is either do 1 packet or 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. And this is just warm water, 1 cup of warm water. Now, if you have a bigger KitchenAid than I do, you can do this all at once. Double the recipe at once. I just don't have that big of a KitchenAid, so I'm gonna do this recipe one at a time. So there's my yeast. I'm gonna put a little over 1/4 teaspoon of sugar on top, just to give it something to feed on. And then while that's all coming together, I'm gonna give it a quick stir. Okay, and we're just gonna let this sit for a few minutes while it comes to a foam, or starts to foam. So in my mixer, I am going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then I need 2 1/2 cups of flour. And this is just a 1/2 cup. I know I should be spooning this in, not scooping it, but here we are. And this is just all-purpose flour. About a 1/2 tablespoon of olive oil. We'll start with that, and then once this gets foamy, I will add this in. in the meantime, let's check on our meatballs. And I just use this electric instant read thermometer because I find it is so easy with things like this. You just poke it in. They're 122 degrees right now. We're trying to get to 165, so we got a ways to go. Okay, my yeast is very foamy. She's clearly alive and doing well, so I'm gonna add that in. And then I'm gonna just let this knead for me. I am going to repeat this process, so I'm gonna go get some more water, get the yeast added in, and while this is making the dough, then I'll get the next batch of yeast going. I think I'll probably do between 3 and 5 batches of pizza dough. All right, friends, this is our final haul. We have our meatballs in the back, pizza dough, burritos, our tamale pie, cabbage rolls, and our lasagna. All right, friends, so while that dough was mixing, I was able to get the rest of the dishes done. So the kitchen is pretty much clean. I just need to get the meatballs wrapped and put away. So all I do is I am just going to top those foil containers. They come with a lid, so I just put the lid on it and then put a layer of saran or foil around it as well, just to keep them lasting a little bit longer. And then all of my Pyrex dishes come with lids, so I'm just gonna pop the lid on those and we will eat them in the near term. As for the pizza crust, I don't let it rise. I just stick it straight into a Ziploc bag that I spray with some oil. And then when I take it out of the oven or out of the freezer to defrost, that's when I let it do its rising. I've never had any issue with it. I do a ton of freezer pizza crust, so that's the best way that I have found to do it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I had so much fun just getting my freezer all loaded up with good, yummy food again. That way we can ensure as the busy season of summer and planting comes around, we are still eating well and we're not defaulting back on junk food or fast food or anything like that. If you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I would love if you would share some of these videos with someone else that might find them of interest. I appreciate each and every one of you being here, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for being here. Bye, friend.